Okay, recording has started.
Okay, so I guess I will go first. My name is Ursuline Hope. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am an employee with the state of Colorado, and I'm here with my co-facilitator and partner in crime, Nadia. And I'm also a community advisory board member in regards to some of the efforts that are happening at CDPHE.
So, hey everyone, my name is Nadia Moretta. I'm the Community Inclusion Specialist for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. I lead a community advisory board that Ursuline is part of, and I also lead a youth advisory board. I'm happy to be here and to answer all your questions.
I think the first ones that were on the platform are kind of a housekeeping thing. From Kimberly Matthews, there was a, will your PowerPoint be available for downloading? And then also Sandra Gilbert is asking, how can we get the presentation or the resources? I think you're free to upload them right into the chat here if you would like to, Nadia. And then.
Yeah, they should be available. I actually just remembered in the middle of the presentation that I hadn't uploaded it. So I actually just uploaded it, but I also just put it in the chat for you all. And the resources are linked in the last slide for you all to download. Everything is linked.
And this is Sabra from AMCHP, and we do want to encourage you. You can also come off mute. We're a small group. If you have any questions for the presenters, and if you have a question, probably somebody else does also. So don't be afraid to ask. We also want to acknowledge, for those of you that have seen the news, that there's been a mass shooting at a school in Texas, and so just also want to give people permission to take the space that you need. And if this is not where you should be right now, that it is fully acceptable to be where you need to be.
We don't bite, I promise. If you have any if you have any burning questions at all, Nadia and I are here for that.
Or any stories you want to hear?
I just wanted to say, just thank you for the presentation. I was just going over in my head, what I learned from you, and the things that I can recall is the fact, you need to have the individuals that are in the community a part of the decision making. And I appreciate you reminding us about the need that you have to compensate them. It's so important, gas and things of that nature. Sometimes we do forget about that, we just want everybody to do things voluntarily. I don't know, because we do so much voluntarily sometimes. But I appreciated those reminders. And let's see, there were so many different takeaways, but it was just good reminders and some eye openers about things that sometimes you overlook. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's really fascinating sometimes how the people that are closest to us and the people that are impacted by our services and what have you, we forget to kind of bring them into the conversation to really be able to build comprehensive programs and policies and practices, because they're going to be the ones that are most impacted by those same things. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts about the reminder of community engagement and the benefits of looking at it that way, as well as making sure that we're compensating folks for their time and their efforts as well. So it's definitely a part of pay equity that people sometimes forget, because they don't have to be volunteering their time, but they're ultimately providing perspective that allows us to build better programs and practices. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Just want to add one more thing that I learned from you, which is really good. You know, you mentioned the fact that we shouldn't assume that just because community members are not engaged is that they just don't want to be. We have to be mindful of the fact that they've been so, you know, their voices have been unwelcome for so long that you have to actually teach them, you know, how to be engaged. And I think sometimes we forget about that, you know, yeah, you have to take the extra step to let them know why it matters and how their voice, you know, can be effective, you know, if they want to see change. Because yeah, I thought that was a big thing. I was like, yeah, that's missing. So, and so that was helpful for me as a good reminder. Because sometimes, you know, you just get so tired, like, oh, they just want to watch cable all day long. And you're forgetting, no, you reminded us today, no, you have to go another step. So, sorry, thank you.
I see that you unmuted, Kim. Did you have something you wanted to ask?
I did. I want to thank you both for a wonderful presentation. And in my role at the Ohio Department of Health, I am a parent consultant within our Bureau of Maternal, Child, and Family Health. And we do a lot of community and family engagement intentionally. And one of the things that you shared in your PowerPoint, and I actually wrote it down because I wanted to quote you on it, was you said, people won't trust you unless you are willing to trust them. And that really hit me in my soul, because I think that goes back to meeting people where they are and helping people know that you're doing your best to meet them where they are. And it's important and it matters. And it adds value to their voice. It helps them understand that you care about them, you care about their needs, and that you truly want to be a help to them and a support to them. And in doing that, that really empowers them to keep on keeping on. Because life can be very, very challenging for many different reasons. And so I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that. And it really, really, it encouraged me to keep on keeping on and to always be mindful of checking myself and making sure that I am presenting myself in a way that I am not sharing, you know, any judgment, or that I'm also doing that deep internal dive of my internal bias that we all have, that I have, and that I don't want that to come into my work when I'm serving people who need help every day. So thank you.
You're so welcome. And it's wonderful to hear that that was something that impacted you. I think in general, when I think about community engagement and the work that I do with the Community Advisory Board and the Youth Advisory Board, trust is a huge component in how I go about my everyday and how I interact with them. And I think it's a goal of mine to build relationships with them, and using all the techniques that I use in my real life when I'm building relationships with friends or people I just met. So it's good to know that that impacted you.
I think that awareness piece about the power differential as well, and being able to really share that power in a way that invites people in is another another component of all of this. And it's something that sometimes we forget, that it can be an intimidating environment, to be someone who's encouraging that community participation, because it's just second nature, I guess, for us and the folks that are doing the work. So we don't think sometimes our position can be intimidating in itself. and being able to meet people where you are, like you mentioned, Kim, whether that's connecting with them in the grocery store or the library or their home or what have you. I mean, think about their comfort zones, and being able to really acknowledge that and embrace that in order to start building those bridges where there once wasn't any type of bridge. That in itself can be a huge benefit to starting to cultivate those relationships.
I see your hand raised, Sarah. Go ahead and unmute.
Perfect. I guess I would maybe say I have a question, or I'm interested in hearing some thoughts. So I work for the Minnesota Department of Health, and we have an early childhood focused project that we're really striving for it to be community led. And something that I find happens a lot, and I love how you guys talk about power sharing. Like, community engagement is more than just like asking for feedback from people. It's about, sharing power and something in public health there. We sort of have a circle of influence that we can actually, impact change on. And oftentimes I'm finding when I'm working with the community and letting them really drive the project, the problems that arise that they want to tackle are beyond us in public health. And so, or they're sort of beyond like the scope of the project. So like the project that we're working on is really kind of focused on integration of primary care into early childhood. And we're working with the Black community in the Twin Cities because there's a lot of historical barriers around getting families into primary care and then getting them linked with services that are, that they may need during the early childhood phase. And oftentimes problems with childcare, problems with, all these other kind of like systems partners, those are the things that come to the forefront. And so I'm interested in sort of thoughts on how to be a community driven power, like really share the power, and yet how to kind of continue to like say, like, this is the focus, like acknowledge, validate, and yet I don't want to like steer them in a different direction because I want them to be driving it. And it's just a struggle that I often find with different advisory groups, different community groups. That I struggle with how do we work in that kind of environment?
I mean, I definitely can speak from the perspective of a community member and being on the cab with Nadia. And some of those same things that you just mentioned have definitely come up, like, right, people expressing their frustrations about different elements of the system that you might not have any control over. So I totally hear what you're saying. And I think that, to your point, it is really helpful to acknowledge those the frustrations and acknowledge the fact that there are intersecting systems sometimes that prevent certain access or services from transpiring. I mean, that's definitely real. We literally just had a conversation about that this past Saturday, where we were talking about 4 different systems, right? We were talking about the Department of Human Services, the Department of Transportation, the Department of all of these different intersecting systems that are creating these barriers. So to that point, what I've learned as a community member and also as someone who works for the state of Colorado is that I take away and absorb some of those frustrations and insights gained from those conversations to challenge myself and have additional conversations with my fellow state employees in different departments. So for example, for myself, I'm on a equity board. And so that equity board touches a variety of different state departments. And I find myself having conversations based on the feedback from this community advisory board to be able to provide perspective about other areas of the system that are creating barriers where I need my fellow, peers, I should say, to assist with some of these efforts in moving the needle forward as well. So I would encourage all of that to say, that was a really long answer, but all of that to say, I would encourage you to find different groups within your, whether it's your state or your local departments, and have those conversations at a larger scale, because you can't do it by yourself. All of these systems intertwine, and we don't sometimes know how they impact each other until we have these conversations with community members to be able to provide that perspective at a global scale.
One other thing I want to mention, so with leading the Youth Partnership for Health Advisory Board and the Community Advisory Board, a lot of times is you just got to give them space to vent, to get the frustrations out, to mention all the systemic issues that are going on. And it could be that that takes up your entire agenda, but that's how you establish that relationship, and kind of getting those things off the table is important. And then when you meet again, you might have an opportunity to start moving towards those deliverables. One other thing I want to mention too, and I think this has been very helpful in regards to building relationships and moving the needle, is having community, or having whoever's facilitating these conversations be community themselves, or people who are part of the community, because they already know what's going on. They've already established their relationships. They've experienced the injustices that community members have experienced, and so they're more capable of actually connecting with community and having these conversations.
I want to add one more thing to that too. I agree with what Nadia just said, and empowering, like she was just saying, the community, like sometimes they can also be the resource. And one thing that I found about this community advisory board is I've made so many connections with people I hadn't made connections with before, who have legit resources within their own communities that I might not have been aware of. And that shared process and us just congregating together to have those conversations in itself was a resource that furthered my knowledge about different things that I wasn't aware of. And then the other piece that I would just add to that is also being forthcoming and honest. We had this really tough conversation a couple meetings ago where the person who was giving us some information just was not forthcoming, and it was making it very difficult for us to provide feedback in that group. And so when she finally at the very end of the presentation took all of that away and just was just like, we're not the end all be all, like we don't have any control over this. Hearing that literally opened up the group, and the group was like, thank you for being honest and sharing the fact that you're not the person we should be talking to, So I think just leading also with the power that you may have as you're asking for community voice and being transparent about that can also go a long way.
Thanks. I appreciate those thoughts.
Cindy, would you like to come off mute?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I just want to really thank you both for this excellent presentation. And I really feel that you've given kind of a framework almost for evaluation of what's working and what's not working. And I was just, as you were talking and, during the presentation and also our conversation here in this space, I considered two groups that I am a part of, both community focused. One is the most dynamic group I think I've ever been a part of in my entire career. It is community led, it is focused, it is moving, it is shaken, it is doing some really good work. And the other one is stagnant. And they're very similar, yet something's not working in the second one. And it's really kind of bothered me. And I'm relatively new in my space too. I've only been in my position for about a year, but my observation is like, what's different? There's so much, the construct of both of the groups are the same, but it's just something is different about that second group. And I really do feel that that the belonging piece, the party, we've invited the community to the party, but we didn't, it's not a shared party. I think that is a really wonderful analogy to consider. But I think there's a little bit of dismantling opportunity and really having some good, strong, fierce conversations around what's not working and how do we get this back on track. And you've really provided an excellent framework to consider as we go forward. And I'm very appreciative of both of you and the time that you took to bring this to us for us to be with you today. So thank you.
Just wanted to provide a quick time check. Thank you everyone so far for all your questions. We maybe have time for one more. There's about a minute-ish left before this conversation will unfortunately come to a close. Or any last minute thoughts that you, the presenters, would like to share, Nadia or Ursuline.
I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to look at our video and come in and ask these great questions. And I really appreciate the rich conversation we've had here and the fact that you all care enough to really figure ways out to meet community where they're at. So I really appreciate that.
And I echo what Ursuline said. Anytime you all need like any coaching or consulting or a hand hold, let me know. I'm available for any questions or examples or anything like that. Once you get your time to digest everything that you've heard, just know that we're here to help.
Okay, that brings us to the conclusion. Thank you again so much for sharing and for all the attendees that have asked some really deep and reflective questions on this workshop. Have a good afternoon, everyone.